Well, here we are back again in Grammie's Book Nook. We're going to be continuing our story about Lucy. You'll remember we started this book yesterday, and it's written by Ilene Cooper. Just a reminder, this is not a picture book, this is a chapter book. So we all have to use our imagination to picture what's happening. When we left off yesterday, Bobby had just gotten his puppy for his birthday. Bobby's a very shy boy. He doesn't have very many friends. So he's getting acquainted with his puppy, and after a few days, he decided on a name, and he named the dog Lucy after his very favorite babysitter. So we're going to continue along today. But before I do that, when I was reading the book yesterday and his mom and dad were suggesting names, his dad said, how about if we name the dog Trey, T-R-E-Y, because that means three. And I thought, oh, I know someone named Trey. He's a very special friend of mine. And if you're watching, Trey, I want to say hello to you and tell you how much I miss seeing you. So let's continue along. Reading glasses down and reading glasses on. Lucy may have been the best dog in the world, but she definitely was not the easiest dog to live with. She liked to howl. Beagles do that, you know. And she loved to run. And she liked to chew. In fact, she loved to chew. One morning, Bobby's mother asked, has anyone seen my other slipper? Bobby had seen it all right. It was at the foot of his bed, a brown fleecy slipper, all curled up in a ball, looking like a mouse. It made Bobby jump when he saw it. Oh dear, I think Lucy got a hold of your slipper. Oh, Mom sighed. Puppies do like to chew. I should have been more careful. From now on, let's put things she might like to chew on out of sight. The family tried. Mrs. Quinn gave Lucy her other slipper. Chew away, Lucy, she said. Then she moved the rest of her shoes to a shelf high in the closet, and she put all of her magazines on a table. Bobby tried to make sure his clothes were all picked up. He didn't always remember. He remembered better after Lucy chewed a hole through his favorite Chicago Cubs t-shirt. Mr. Quinn hung up all his clothes. He put his dirty socks in the hamper. He put his slippers on his night table. See, he bragged, it's not hard to keep Lucy away from things. You just have to be careful, like me. One hot evening, Mr. Quinn came home after work. He was tired and sweaty. He tossed a folder onto the sofa. What's that? Bobby's mother asked. Oh, just some papers I have to read. I have a big meeting in the morning. Do it after dinner, Mrs. Quinn told him. It's almost time to eat. Bobby was slurping spaghetti when he heard another sound. It was coming from the living room. Uh-oh. It was a tearing and ripping sound. Bobby looked up. His mother and father heard it too. There was one more noise. It was growling. I moved all the magazines, Mrs. Quinn said. It must be... Oh no! Mr. Quinn jumped up, and Mrs. Quinn and Bobby hurried to follow him into the living room. Ugh, the living room was covered with pieces of paper. They were the important papers that Mr. Quinn had brought home from work with him, and some of them were torn. Some of them were chewed, and Lucy was pawing and biting on a piece of yellow paper. Oh no, Mr. Quinn moaned. Mrs. Quinn rushed to pick up the papers, Bobby grabbed Lucy up in his arms and she wriggled to get free. No, Lucy, no. Chewing those papers was a bad thing to do. It was a very bad thing to do, Lucy. Lucy looked around. She watched Mr. Quinn rubbing his hand through his hair and Mrs. Quinn gathering up papers. Lucy seemed to know that she'd made a big mess of things, so she hung her head. You can still read them, Mrs. Quinn said. She picked up a piece of paper with a big hole in the middle. Well, maybe not this one, she said. It was my fault, Mr. Quinn said. I shouldn't have left the folder on the sofa, but he still looked angry. Lucy wiggled out of Bobby's arms, and she trotted over to Mr. Quinn. He was now down on his knees, helping his wife pick up the papers. Lucy licked his hand. Lucy, are you trying to make up with me? Mr. Quinn said. He tried to keep a stern look on his face. Lucy licked his hand again. Mr. Quinn had to smile. Lucy, it's very hard to stay mad at someone as cute as you. Almost as hard as keeping things out of your way. He rubbed the dog's head. Lucy jumped up and down, happy again. What are you going to do? Mrs. Quinn asked her husband. Well, I guess I'll read what I can, Mr. Quinn replied as he stood up, and he started laughing. What's so funny? Asked Bobby. Well, when I was about your age, I once forgot to do my homework. So I told the teacher my dog ate it. You did? Bobby asked with wide eyes. My teacher didn't believe me. Mr. Quinn laughed harder. I wonder if my boss will believe me when I tell him that your dog ate my homework. The month of July was hot. Bobby's mother said it was hot enough to fry an egg on the sidewalk. But when Bobby asked her for an egg, she just glared at him. The hot weather was putting everyone in a bad mood. Bobby looked out his living room window. He could see the children who had moved in across the street. There was a boy who was younger than Bobby, a girl who was older than Bobby, and another boy just about Bobby's age. The children were playing volleyball. The girl and the little boy were on one team, and the older boy was a team all by himself. He was good at hitting the ball over the net. The game looked like fun. Bobby wished he could be playing with the new kids, but then he thought about going across the street and saying hello, and he knew that he absolutely could not do it. Meeting new people made his heart pound fast. His face got all red. Even his ears got red. He was afraid he'd do something stupid. No, it was better not to try to meet new people. Anyway, now that he had Lucy, he didn't need any other friends. Lucy woke up from her nap. She danced all around Bobby. Do you want to go for a walk? Bobby asked. What if they went for a walk and those kids across the street tried to talk to him? What would he say? Are you really sure you want to go? He asked Lucy, and Lucy just kept on dancing. Okay, I'll get your leash. Bobby and Lucy went outside. Bobby snuck a look across the street. The children were gone. Bobby and Lucy walked down the street. No one was around. Maybe everyone was inside trying to keep cool. The house on the corner was big and yellow. Old Mr. Davis lived in the house. Sometimes Bobby saw him bringing in his newspaper or weeding in his garden. His garden was full of beautiful roses and daylilies and big sunflowers that were taller than Bobby. Mr. Davis was sitting in a rocking chair on his porch. When Bobby and Lucy walked past, Mr. Davis lifted his hand. "Hi, Bobby," he said in a tired voice. "What's your dog's name?" "Lucy." Bobby could start feeling his face turning red. Lucy stood up on her hind legs and barked at the sound of her name. Bobby hurried on. On the next block, there was a small park. It was mostly for little kids. The children went on the swings or played in the sandbox. Today, the park was empty, except for a toddler and his babysitter. The boy was taking fast baby steps on his chubby little legs. He looked like he might tumble over, but he never did. The boy started to cry when he saw Lucy. His babysitter picked him up. "I guess he's afraid of dogs," the girl said. Bobby didn't see how anybody could be afraid of Lucy. "She's nice. She likes everybody," Bobby said. "Do you want to say hello to my doggie?" Oh, the babysitter said, "I don't think so." The baby was crying and trying to run away. "Oh, I'm sorry," the babysitter said to Bobby. "Would you mind taking your dog to the other side of the park?" Bobby felt bad that the little boy didn't like Lucy, but he did what the babysitter asked. He and Lucy walked away. Bobby sat on a park bench and he tossed a stick to Lucy. "Fetch, Lucy," Bobby said. He wanted to see if she would bring the stick back to him, but she didn't. He looked over at the little boy. Too bad he couldn't give Lucy a chance, but Bobby knew it was hard to give something new a chance, so he really understood how the little boy was feeling. It was too hot to stay in the park for long. Slowly, Bobby and Lucy walked home. Mr. Davis was still sitting in his chair, but now his eyes were closed. He must be sleeping, Bobby thought. He was ready to walk by, but Lucy stood very still. "What's wrong? What is it? Why won't you walk?" Bobby wanted to go home and have a cool drink, but Lucy wasn't having any of it. She just stood there. She stared at Mr. Davis, and then she pulled hard on her leash. She wanted to go up on Mr. Davis's porch. "No, Lucy, no," Bobby said, but Lucy would not take no for an answer. She kept tugging on her leash. Finally, Bobby followed her up the stairs. Mr. Davis was sweating. His eyes were still closed. "Mr. Davis? Mr. Davis?" Bobby said softly. But Mr. Davis didn't answer. Bobby felt scared. "Mr. Davis, are you okay?" he asked. "Mr. Davis, can you hear me?" Mr. Davis's eyes fluttered. "Bobby? Bobby, is that you? Are you okay? Are you okay?" Bobby asked again. "Bobby, go get your mother," Mr. Davis said in a weak voice. I don't feel very good." Bobby and Lucy ran all the way home. Bobby's mother raced over to Mr. Davis's house. Bobby and Lucy were right behind her. Mr. Davis was breathing hard. "My medicine," he gasped. "It's on the kitchen table." Bobby had never seen his mother move so fast. She brought out the medicine and a glass of water. She helped Mr. Davis take his medicine. "Oh, I'll be better in a minute or two," Mr. Davis said. "Oh, I'm going to call 911, Mrs. Quinn said. "Oh, no, that's not necessary. The medicine works fast," he told her. "Please just help me into the house." Mrs. Quinn helped Mr. Davis inside. He sat on the couch. He was starting to look much better. "I'm sorry," Mr. Davis said. I didn't mean to scare anyone. Ugh, I was just so tired. It's been so hot. I couldn't get inside to get my medicine." Mrs. Quinn turned to Bobby. "How did you know that Mr. Davis was sick?" "I didn't know," Bobby said. "It was Lucy." "Lucy?" his mother exclaimed. "She knew something was wrong," Bobby told her, "and she wouldn't go home until we checked on Mr. Davis." Mr. Davis was sitting up straighter. "That little dog of yours is a hero," he said. Bobby looked down at Lucy, who was sitting quietly at his feet. "Wow, Lucy, you're a hero," Bobby said. Mrs. Quinn gave Lucy a pat. "I should say so," she said. "Mr. Davis, how are you feeling now?" He took a big, deep breath and he said, "Oh, I'm just about back to normal." "Can I call someone for you?" Mrs. Quinn asked him. "My daughter, maybe," he replied. Bobby and his mother said they would wait with Mr. Davis until his daughter came over. Mr. Davis had a very interesting house. Pictures of soldiers and cowboys were on the wall. 2 big fish hung on the wall, too. Mr. Davis told Bobby he caught those fish when he was just a boy. The other things that filled the house were books, 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 and more books. Some of them were on bookshelves. Some of them were on tables. Some of them were piles of books on the floor. Bobby liked the book of Bible stories with the shiny colored pictures. Mr. Davis's daughter made a fuss when she came. She thanked Bobby and his mother over and over again. She thanked Lucy, too. Mr. Davis told Bobby to come by any time. The next day was hotter than the one before, and Bobby was bored. "Mom, will you take me to a movie?" he asked. "I'm busy paying bills, maybe later," she said. Then Bobby had an idea. "Do you think I should go over and visit Mr. Davis today?" Bobby asked. Mrs. Quinn looked up at him and said, "Do you want to?" Oops. "Well, his house had lots of neat stuff," Bobby told her. "And he did tell me to come over any time." He did indeed," his mother agreed. "I could see if he's feeling better today," Bobby said. "It would be very nice of you to visit Mr. Davis," Bobby's mother agreed. "Okay, then Lucy and I will be going." Bobby put Lucy on her leash and they walked down the street. The closer they got to the yellow house, the louder Bobby's heart thumped. It was one thing to help Mr. Davis when he was sick, but it was something totally different to just stop by for a visit. But Lucy pulled Bobby forward. Mr. Davis was working in his yard. "Well, hello there," Mr. Davis called. "I'm feeling fine today. Did you come by to say hello?" Lucy hurried toward the gate. Bobby had to run to keep up with her. "Yes," Bobby said. There was no turning back now. "My daughter bought me some cookies and some lemonade this morning." Mr. Davis asked, "Would you like to come in and have some?" Bobby nodded. Bobby, Mr. Davis, and Lucy went inside. Mr. Davis got the lemonade and cookies. Bobby looked at the picture of a cowboy on the wall. "That was my grandfather," Mr. Davis said. "What? Your grandfather was a cowboy?" Bobby asked with surprise. "He was a cowboy in Texas after the Civil War." He pointed to another picture. "That's him when he was a soldier." "Wow," Bobby said. "A cowboy and a soldier? All my grandfather does is work in a grocery store." "Would you like me to tell you about my grandfather?" Mr. Davis asked. "Sure," Bobby said. Mr. Davis sat on the couch. and Bobby sat next to him. Lucy snuggled between them. Mr. Davis opened a photo album that was sitting on the table. Now, this is a picture of my grandfather when he was a boy in Ohio, Mr. Davis began. That little fellow with him? That's his friend from the next farm. They were friends for their whole entire lives. They even went to Texas together when they were grown up. Bobby liked listening to Mr. Davis's stories. He especially liked the stories about the two young friends. Bobby looked over at Mr. Davis. Bobby thought maybe he'd found a new friend. White hair, lots of wrinkles, old, but still a friend. And that's where we're going to leave it for today. When we come back the next time, we're going to finish this little book. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. So, as usual, I hope you've been enjoying your day up until now, and you'll enjoy the rest of the day too. And you know what comes next. Young and old, we all need to be doing it. What is it? That's right, washing our hands. So this is the way we close our time together every single time. I hope I remember all the words today. Are you ready? Sleeves up. And off we go. We're gonna wash those germs away. Strong and healthy every day. We make wise choices so we stay well. We're gonna wash those germs away. We're gonna wash those germs away. Strong and healthy every day. We make wise choices so we stay well. We're gonna wash those germs away. We make wise choices in every way. We're gonna wash those germs away. So, I'm gonna say goodbye for now. Looking forward to seeing you the next time. Bye!